Hi, Purpose Partner. Welcome to another episode of Rise to Your Purpose, a personal and spiritual development podcast for female entrepreneurs with a mission. We are your hosts, Brandie and Natalie.
We are founders of Victorious Entrepreneurs Rising, where we guide women to build profitable businesses online through diversifying your income, using kingdom principles in marketing, and operating in a spirit of rest so that you can create kingdom impact.
After this episode, be sure to join our Purpose Partner Facebook community and get your copy of our Rise to Your Purpose devotional so we can continue to serve you as we partner together in our faith and business. Let's dive into today's episode. Hey, friends and purpose partners, thanks so much for joining us for another episode of Rise to Your Purpose. I'm your host, Brandie, and if you're new to us here at Victorious Entrepreneurs Rising, we guide women to build profitable online businesses that work for you while creating kingdom impact and operating in a place of rest. Today, I'm so excited to introduce you to my friend, Hillary Englad. Hillary homeschools both of her children. She runs a financial services business, all while juggling a mystery illness. And if you've been following our podcast for a while, you know I have a lot to talk about on that subject. And so through these trials, she found herself clinging to Christ and learned so much about not just herself, but also her Savior. So today we're going to be diving into the struggles of running a business while also enduring, medical trials and different health issues, and how it can really bring you closer to Christ. So Hillary, thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I'd love for you to share a little bit with our audience just about your story and kind of your journey, and then we'll dive into some deeper questions.
Absolutely. So my journey began in childhood. I have what is diagnosed as vasovagal syncope. It's fainting episodes, miscommunication between my heart and my brain. Outside of that, I had a lot of muscle pains, weakness, things that the doctors really just sort of dismissed when I was younger. Oh, you're young, you're growing, you'll be fine. Go outside and be more active, even though I was involved in volleyball, tracks, softball. I did a lot of the stuff. As an adult, I dismissed it as well, but I got COVID, and shortly after getting COVID, I had a lot of symptoms really just start taking over. I had a lot of sharpshooting pain in my face, only on one side. It led me to really only be able to eat what I could drink through a straw. So it was at that point that I was considering this brain surgery to alleviate the nerve that this was happening to. It was a lot of trials really that kind of happened within a 6-month period. And we can dive into that. But for now, my medical journey really consists of me trying to find solutions and not really getting anywhere. A lot of pain in my body, numbing, pins and needles, migraines that last for upwards of a month and a half. It's just, it's wild.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds so wild. And running a business at the same time, it just adds extra stress, because when you're not feeling your best, then you're also like, how do you even show up for people, or how do you show up for your business, or do the, day in and day out things of building a business? And then I also believe, at least in my circumstance, my health definitely has impacted my faith journey, where it's kind of like ebbs and flows with like, why me, God? Like, I don't understand, to like, God, you're the only thing that's keeping me alive right now, holding me. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about your journey with building your relationship with Jesus and how that all intertwined.
Yeah, so absolutely. I grew up in a Catholic home. I really had a lot of questions about what we did from a ritualistic standpoint as far as Catholics go. I don't know if you've ever attended a Catholic church, but if you have, there's a lot of standing, sitting, kneeling, and reciting of the same prayers. So for me growing up, there were a lot of questions around that. And I said, well, if the people within my church and my family can't exactly answer or give me a sufficient answer as to why we're doing this, then what I'm doing is what I'm doing correct. And so as a young adult, and even up till about 5 years ago, I really started questioning and saying, okay, well, what is Christianity, right? Like, I knew Catholicism wasn't it for me. And I said, okay, I need to go figure out Christianity. What does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean to follow Christ?
Yeah.
And in that search was really when I came to, this is what it means. It means to live the life, walk the life, and express love towards my neighbors. And so for me, like I said, I had a lot of trials that really came through in about a 6-month period of time. So in August of 2021, my entire family was diagnosed with COVID. And this is maybe like a year after I was baptized as a Christian and said, okay, God, I'm giving you my life. And about a year after that was when all of this happened. We all got COVID. We buried my grandmother. We buried my aunt. I buried my other aunt. I had another cousin who we thought we might lose because she had an aneurysm and we thought it was a stroke. We weren't sure what was going on. I still was not recovered from COVID. My health started to decline in this entire process as well. And this same time that I got COVID in August of 2021 was the year I decided to begin homeschooling my children. So I started like a week or two late because I still hadn't recovered from COVID and we had just buried my grandmother. It was a lot of things that I just felt like,
Yeah.
okay, Lord, you're putting me through these trials and I have to understand why. And the more I read and dug into the word, the more I learned like trials are for two reasons. Trials are to show us where we're weak in the faith and to show us that we can't do it alone. Right. So for me, I really took this as an opportunity to say, okay, I tend to want to take it and take control and do these things. I can't do that. I have to lean on Christ. It is because of him. And that was really where my relationship grew. I saw the places I was weak and I said, okay, Lord, if you're going to mold me, if you're going to shape me in these areas, I need to allow you to do that. And I did.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's powerful, Hillary. And I think I totally agree with you. Like I was raised in a Methodist church. And so I like to say we're like 3 levels down from Catholics, where we still do a lot of like the call and response, and there's a lot of traditional rituals that we do in our, in a service with like the stand up and sit down and the hymns that you sing and stuff, which I love growing up in my church, but I feel like we were a little bit more y'all come. I grew up, it was a country church too, so we're a little bit more relaxed, but definitely can relate to like growing up in that church and I guess like really having the religion, but not necessarily having the relationship until I was like, okay, I'm getting fed through other people's relationship, but I really need to create my own relationship and own that with who is God? Who do you say that you are, God? Let me trust you. And then now when I go in and see like, who am I as a daughter of the King, I can believe these things are true about my identity in you. And then it sets me up to be in a posture, I talk about this a lot, a posture of surrender to receive. So like you were saying, like, now that I know who God is and I know that who I am in him, now when I'm going through these trials or these situations, not that it's easy, but it's, sorry, there's like a bug in front of me. Not that it's easy, but it's like, there is like an ease to it, being able to surrender, that being like, okay, I know I'm going through this, like, show me my weaknesses, let me give them to you, let me lean on you so that I can receive your joy, your peace, your love, like you're perfect, and let your perfect plan unfold. And I use the term easy as like, it's not that there's not really a word, right? It's like it's easy because we know who we are in God, and we know like surrendering really does give us like we receive something better in return when our hands are actually empty, instead of like trying to control the thing that's happening in our lives or that circumstance that's happening. But at the same time, our flesh, it's not easy. So there's like that battle between like, yes, in the spirit, like when we have like that Holy Spirit empowerment, it's easy to surrender, but in the flesh, it's not. And so yeah, like
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't want to like dive into my weaknesses. I don't want to like this is hard to like be in the trial, to like figure out the health issues, to build the business, to keep going when you have all of these things. And like you were saying, like over a 6-month period, it was like just arrows coming at you left and right with loss and unexplained health issues. and homeschooling your children and building your business at the same time, like that's a lot. That is hard.
It was massively overwhelming. And
Yes.
I probably spent a good 4 months between August and December, like just every other day or sometimes
Mhm.
weeks on end, just in tears on my knees
Yeah.
and just praying and saying, it's going to be what it's going to be.
Mhm.
And really, I think what gave me the peace was saying, it is what it is, right?
Mhm.
It is as God needs it to be. This is his perfect plan. He sees well more than I can,
Yeah.
and he knows way more than I ever will. So for me, it's like you said, that surrender. It's when you're in Christ, it makes it easier to surrender
Yeah.
because you're able to have that trust and that confidence and that assurance and say, okay, Lord, you are best, you know best, and you are good. And I know that the Bible tells me that it will, it says he works all things together for the good of those who are
Mhm.
called according to his purpose. So I really clung to that. And, I found myself in Job a lot, not
Yeah.
because I think I'm this upright, righteous person, right? Job was blameless, but more in the sense of you don't have to know the reasons why God is putting you through this, but you do have to trust the process. And my husband and I kind of have a little bit of a conflict when we talk about this. And that's because my husband kind of says, well, you should know. You should know the reason why. The reason why is he wants you to be stronger in him and grow closer to him. He's working on that relationship. That's your why.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I guess so, but I still don't want to be put through the fire in
Right.
order to know I'm fireproof.
Mhm.
So, it's definitely a struggle, like you said, between the faith and the flesh, and really just leaning on him is the only thing that really got me through
Yeah.
that, because it was extremely stressful.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm glad you're kind of coming out on the other side of that a little bit. One, but two, I can also like relate when I was really deep in my Crohn's disease journey, and like that was like a three-year long period for me before I had surgery, and then that kind of put me into a season of remission. But it was like, yeah, I felt like I was constant like being plagued. I mean, the wildest things happened to me during those 3 years. What is happening right now? Like, what sick joke am I living in? Like, I have this, and then also this, and this, and this, and this is happening. Like, what world am I living in right now?
Yeah.
And yeah, like going to Job and finding comfort. Like, sometimes things just happen to test you, to prove a point to the enemy.
And you know what's crazy is that I learned as an adult, because growing up, for whatever reason, I don't know that this was something that was like taught to me. It was just something I believed, somehow came to believe. If bad things are happening to you, it's because you're not right with God. And if good
Mhm.
things are happening to you, it's
Yes.
because you're on his side or in his favor. That's not how this works.
Mm-mm.
But it wasn't anything that actually I learned until I was an adult. And
Yes.
it was really eye-opening once God opened my eyes to the truth. I was in shambles for like a month, because
Mhm.
I was living this life claiming I was a Christian, and no, I wasn't. And anybody that came across me, whoever I would have told, oh, I'm a Christian. And then, it's like we had a service on Sunday and they said Christianity gone bad. And that's because I was claiming I was a Christian, but I was still going out and getting drunk. I was still going out and fornicating and, having sex before marriage. And I
Yeah.
was still doing cursing and smoking. Like when I was doing all of these things that, if I was a Christian and I knew his truth, why am I doing these things?
Mhm.
We know that these are things he says, he despises or are abominations, and yet here I am. And so it was a really, I don't know, I want to call it a punch to the gut, but it really felt more like a drop kick.
Yeah.
And so I was so convicted. And there was probably about a month that I just I reveled in that, and I didn't listen to anything, because I really had to take in and say, I am wretched, I am a sinner, the heart is deceitful among all else. What am I going to do? How do I rectify this? And it's understanding, there's not anything that we can do in order to earn our place, essentially, right? But if I can do anything to help who I can and share what he's done in my life and share the work that, he's put in me, then let's do that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was 20. I mean, I had my own relationship with Jesus, but it's definitely not near what it is today. And I was still stuck in a lot of that religiousness of being the perfect Christian or like whatever. And I thought I did something wrong. I felt so much shame and guilt. And like I gave myself Crohn's disease because I sinned in a certain way or whatever. And it did actually disconnect me from God for a minute, because I was like, I'm not worthy, like I'm being punished, I did something to deserve this. And so that definitely hindered my relationship with God. And it wasn't until I finally realized there's no shame and condemnation in Jesus Christ, and repent, God loves you and he actually wants a relationship with you. Like he's not here to fire and brimstone you. And and so yeah, it's very interesting, because you're like, I must have sinned somewhere, like I did this to myself because I'm not the perfect Christian that I'm supposed to be. And that's I think another way how the enemy creates that separation between you and your father. And yeah, it was wild. How did you navigate the times of disappointment and the unknowns and the losses? What was your anchor, or how did you anchor yourself during those times to Jesus?
Really, it was the fact that I found a local church, because where we were at, my husband and I, we were on the same page. We said, okay, well, this is the truth. We know what it is, but we felt like we didn't have anywhere to turn to, because we kind of saw all of the churches, kind of leading that wrong path, right?
Yeah.
And so we said, we really have to be discerning in where we're going, what we're doing, who we're listening to. And so between, God and my husband, those were really my anchors, as far as trying to navigate life and what I was going through. I turned to my husband and I said, let me bounce some ideas off of you. This is what I've been reading. This is what the scriptures are saying. Here's what I'm understanding. Am I understanding this message clearly? What do you think? And so having a husband that was able to have those conversations with me, so helpful.
Yeah.
Major support role for me. Then the fact that we were both on the same page as far as, religion versus spirituality. And then the fact that we both had the same ideals. We said, okay, this is what we need in a church. And we both set out. We prayed a lot, we searched, and we asked questions, and we finally found a local church. And those were some saving graces for sure, because going into that feeling like you have nothing is really, really hard.
Yeah. I think what you said is so important. I think there's definitely attack on the family unit. So the fact that you had your husband as an anchor and that spiritual leader, I think is so important and just awesome. I'm just that makes my heart so happy to hear that.
Major blessing, that's for
yeah.
sure.
Oh yeah. I know. I feel like God sent me my husband. We met in college, basically 3 months before my first flare up with Crohn's disease. So he's literally had been with me through everything. We went to different colleges and we're an hour apart, but he still was with me during different treatments and hospital visits and stuff like that. And I feel like he definitely was an anchor, support to get me through, being a young woman having a disease that is not fun. Literally you pooped, that's the disease, uncontrollably. What, literally when I'm what sick joke am I living in right now that I have a disease that causes me to poop all the time.
Yeah.
And how
Yeah.
like, I mean, it's an inflammatory bowel disease, but it's just like, why is this even a thing? Like, what sick world are we living in that disease is wild? Yeah. And so, like, as a young woman, a 20-year-old, and then to have my colon removed at 23, and then we got married 9 months later. So, like, I've had an ostomy bag since I was 23. So I'm 35 now. So it's been like a lifesaver for me. But like going into, marriage with an ostomy bag, and you're like, okay, now I poop in a bag attached to my stomach. Like, again, what like sick joke am I living in as a 24-year-old woman? Going into marriage this way, and he's like having my husband to be there and really like show in an earthly form like unconditional love. It was really beautiful to like kind of witness like this is how Jesus and this is how God loves you. Like he just loves you for who you are in the relationship you have, not like how you look or how you show up or like if you're perfect or not. And so that I feel like was just a beautiful gift that God gave me through my spouse as well, to be like that anchor for me in that trial period where it was like really in the heavy in the fire. So I just love to hear that your husband was that for you as well. I think that's powerful because there's definitely like so many attacks on the family right now, and the enemy is like working overtime to break down relationship with, in your faith with Jesus, to break down your family unit, to break down like churches even. So yeah, it is important for us to stay connected to those anchors and come back to worship and come back to the word and what does God say about this situation. And he says we are going to go through trials, like, but we can have joy and peace in the fire, and he will be with us in the fire. And like thinking about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and thinking about was it David in the lion's den?
Daniel.
Okay. Daniel. I was like, David doesn't sound right. Daniel in the lion's den. And the different stories of Moses. I'm in Exodus right now. I'm reading through the Old Testament again, and just seeing like how God shows up in the most unique and unexpected ways, but you still have to step into the water. Like the Israelites still had to step into the ocean, and then the waters parted, right? Like they still had to go through the plagues, and they were in Egypt when it stunk. Like it wasn't necessarily like they were free from that trial or free from that pain, but God was always there to deliver them and kept their promise, and he did it in very weird ways. And so like allowing God to be your actual master provider and protector, and taking that obligation of this is what my deliverance is going to look like, this is what my redemption story is going to look like, because he got them out of Egypt, right, by parting the sea. He gave them water by throwing a stick into the bitter water and turning it, into drinkable water. He gave them water through the tapping the staff on the rock, like manna dropping from the sky, like wild. And when we think about that and apply that to our own world, like, okay, God, I have to trust you that your plan is far better and probably weirder and going to be out of my expectations. And that was something that I had to learn through my own trials, with like my health issues, was like, I have to take that obligation and accusation off of God of like, if you don't do it in this way, then you're not who you say you are. You're not a good father. And be like, I trust that you are a good father, and however you want to do it, however you want to love me, I will receive.
Absolutely. I think it's so funny that you said, in whatever weird way he's going to do it. That's so funny because I relate to that. Like, so I look at things in the Bible, right? Everything is cyclical, and I see it as longevity.
Mhm.
So when I'm looking at things, I look at, like Esther and say, oh my gosh, like for her to be in that position, do you know 500 years or something had to pass in order for her to be in this position to do these things?
Mhm.
So I'm like, well, I know I don't have 500 years, but even if I'm looking at it in my time frame, it's not going to be my time frame.
Right.
It's God's. And so it's funny that you say, the weird ways, because
Mhm.
there have been plenty of times where I look back on my life and I say, in that moment, I can recall saying, I have no idea how I'm going to get out of this. I have no idea how
Yeah.
this is going to work out. I have no idea what's going to happen. And then sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's 6 years.
Mhm.
And I look back and go, oh, that's why that happened.
Yeah.
Oh, I see now.
Yeah.
And so being able to look back and laugh at some of the things I thought, it's like, oh, I could have done this.
Mhm.
But when I'm looking back and saying, well, if I had done that, it wouldn't have worked out the way it did.
Right.
So it's funny though. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So how did your health impact your business, to kind of bring it back to like the business aspect of things? What was that like for you?
Massive. It impacted my business where it actually took me out of, being able to meet with my clients and do things like that for probably about 3 months. I still did try, unfortunately, I come from this very strong work ethic background. And I say unfortunately because it's to my detriment. I tell my husband all the time, I don't know when to turn it off. And I think that could, as entrepreneurs, that's part of, the hustle. You have to
Mhm.
do this. If you're not, how does my husband say it? If you're not hunting, you're not eating, or I don't
Right.
remember
Yeah.
how he says it.
I get what you're saying now.
But so I could barely talk because the pain shot across the left side of my face.
Mhm.
Couldn't brush my teeth really, like it was
Yeah.
hit or miss, man. But I struggled to do a lot of daily things. And
Mhm.
so I run a financial services business. My position, I just say, we're going to meet, I'm going to show you what you need to do, here's how we work it. I review their pensions with them, but that also involves me talking to people on a
Right.
daily basis. And so when I had trouble speaking or laughing or smiling, meeting with somebody and then trying to, barely
Yeah.
talk to them was not ideal.
Mhm.
Uh, I met a few times with people and I realized at that point it's not going to work. So I didn't work for maybe 3 months or so, and I put my business kind of on hold. I had to send out a message. I called a few of my clients that are, uh, deal with me probably on a every month basis. But majority of them, I sent out text messages, I sent out
Mhm.
emails, and I had to divert them. Here's my team. They can help you at this point until further notice, because I didn't know what I was going to
Yeah.
be doing. I didn't know what the outcome looked like. Between January of 22 and April of 22, I had like 17 doctor's appointments. I saw 8 or 9 different doctors. I was in the ER twice. I had a massive allergic reaction. I had to go see an allergist, and now I have an EpiPen. Uh, it was crazy when I tell you, like, a super wild
Mhm.
ride, super wild. Um, it impacted my husband's business too. Like, he had to stop working so that he could help me, physically me.
Mhm.
And it takes a village though. Like, I had my parents, thankfully, who are close by, who were able to help me and my husband with the kids. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, both girls. Um, so being able to have people around me, even people within our church, who we had just started going to this church.
Yeah.
And these were people who had known me for maybe 2 months at this time, maybe, right? And we saw them on Sunday. So
Right.
they met me like 6 times. And they would help out with food, or with they took the kids somewhere, I think once or twice. Um, they offered to take me places because my husband and I were sharing a car at this time. I mean, we were going through it. And so the business really suffered, as far as like me being able to gain new clients and do things
Mhm.
like that. I still have my passive income that was coming in, which was great because it was helping some. But unfortunately, when you're still trying to build the business, if you're not constantly building it, you're not going to constantly have something coming in, right? But yeah, I mean, it took a huge hit. I mean, just because of those, I didn't actually be able to start feeling like I could work again because of the chronic fatigue, the brain fog. I was getting a lot of stuff confused. I have some things put in place now, but I mean, when I'm doing transfers for people, I'm messing up paperwork. When I'm
Right.
trying to meet with individuals, I was doing some things wrong.
Yeah.
And I have a really great memory. I can recall a conversation I had with a client 2 years ago. So for me to be able, like, I'm now at that point where I'm forgetting I met with them 2 weeks ago. I'm forgetting the conversation we had a month ago.
Yeah.
So it's impacted my business long term. It did impact it massively in the immediate, right? What I would consider the short term within the first 6 months of me getting COVID and then having everything happen. From August of 2021 till maybe about June of 2022, I didn't work a whole lot. Like I put in some, but it wasn't nearly what it should have been. And my business took like a 50% hit. It was massive. Yeah.
How did that impact your faith? Like what were some stories or, conversations maybe that you had with God of like, how did that, I guess, the trust, because I know for me, like I struggle with that sometimes of being like, I don't see the vision, I don't understand, like you're supposed to be this good father, I don't feel loved, I don't feel protected or provided for or comforted from you right now. Like how did, like, talk through like that relationship journey that you went on with God at that point?
Man, so I went through a few.
Yeah.
The main one that comes to mind, like I said, I had just started homeschooling. I was still running my business. I was in year 2 or 3 of my business at that point. I kind of went through this probably about 2 months or so where I was praying to God. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where you need me. I feel like I'm being pulled in a million directions. You show me. Tell me what I need to
Right.
do. And then, I hear this sermon that tells me you're in a position where you can homeschool your children. That is the greatest privilege of all. Can you earn money? Absolutely. Take it as it comes.
Yeah.
But what you should be doing, homeschooling your children and helping people. And it was so, I don't want to say devastating, but it was not the news I was hoping for.
Right.
I love homeschooling my children and I love helping people, but I really wanted to focus on my business. I really wanted to amp that back up. And so I was really hoping he was going to be like, go out and take over the world. And I was like, yes. But he wasn't. He was like, chill. Take care of your priorities, which are your children and your family and the people that you care about. The clients you have, those are good. Keep that. Do that. But there's no need for you to do more. And I struggled with that, I think, because I know that through my business, I can help a lot of people. But I think that for me, helping them, I'm helping a lot of the people that other individuals don't want to help. So I deal a lot with helping teachers understand their retirement because nobody tells them how they're going to retire.
Yeah.
You work for a privately held corporation. They send you to these meetings, right? You have to go to HR meetings that will explain your benefits. Most districts in any state don't have that. I deal with a lot of people who come to me 5 years out from retirement and say, I want to retire, but I just got diagnosed with cancer. I want to retire, but I just had this very big medical issue come up. I got diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I had a stroke, and now they think I have a cognitive impairment. I can't go back to work. So I deal with so many things that I could help people with. And I'm realizing like the best way to help people is to just share what I do. And that's part of why I took to social media. But, navigating that conversation with God was a lot of me still trying to hold on to it and control it and not relinquish that and surrender and say, okay, Lord, use me as you will. So it was a hard one. And it was a hard one for my husband too, because he didn't get it. He was like, no, you have to do the business. You have to do the business. And I was like, talk to God. like talk to the big man, because this is what I got. So it's a struggle. It's been a struggle. And I think that that's still a daily thing that I have a conversation with him about is use me as you will. Lean me into your will and not my own. Help me, guide me, and raise me up into who you need me to be, not just for my family, not just for my kids, not just for my husband, not just for the people around me, for my church, like for our leaders, for wherever you're going to place me 5 years, 15 years down the road. Prepare me today because I don't know the day.
Yeah. Nothing is wasted. And I do think like everything that I went through in my early 20s, and even I'm 35 now, so like early 30s, like nothing is wasted, and God is preparing you for like that next season. But he's also taught me like the power of rest and the power of getting in sync with his rhythm and his will and his desires versus like worldly rhythms and desires and wants and needs and stuff like that. And so it's I think there's a theme happening in the kingdom women where I've seen in the conversation I've had of like, God's telling me to be still and know. God's calling me into a season of rest. God's calling me to like let go of things and just rely on him. And so it's very interesting to hear you say that because I've been in that journey or in that season, and I've also had several conversations where like God is calming his children, like he's putting them in a place of just like rest and quietness, and almost just like, you need to be in deep communion with me to prepare for like whatever he's bringing to the kingdom. I'm not exactly sure what's coming next, but I do think like he's preparing a lot of people to learn how to slow down, to learn how to hear his voice and discern his wills and his desires over their own. So I kind of love that he's doing that for you too, because I'm like, all right, God, what's the move here? What's going on in the kingdom? There's a shift happening in the marketplace. Like there's a lot of women because that's who I primarily work with, or just like women of faith in the marketplace who are building, like they want to build Christ-centered businesses. And a lot of them are being like, I feel like I'm being pointed towards taking care of my family and slowing down and letting these things go that are really just extra and not necessarily what God has called for me to do. And I'm just pointing that out. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. One of my friends, she's like, I have a lot of people who are being called away from social media right now, who are used to building online businesses and used to social media. And I don't know, like maybe there's a theme with like really learning to trust God, that he is your master provider and your protector, like your source for everything. And it's almost like he's putting women of God in this place of complete reliance on him. So yeah, I think there's going to be some sort of like a massive rise up of women in the marketplace, but just like women in leadership roles within their family, within wherever he has them placed. So I don't know what that's going to look like, but it just seems like there's this little theme, this trend happening with the woman of God. It's interesting. I'm just going to put that, like, just blurb that out there, and we'll come back to this podcast episode and be like, that's what happened. That's what I was talking about, whenever that comes to pass.
I would be so curious as to what's going on with the men too. Like I would be curious to see what that looks like on their side. That's interesting. That's so crazy. Isn't it wild the way that, and you know what is so crazy? Like I thank God every day for his provision, because the way I came to this local church that I'm in was through my business, which is so wild. So my financial services business, I do a lot to give back to my community. One of the ways I gave back in 2020, a local high school reached out on social media and they said, hey, we have this group. All these seniors are going to graduate. They can't walk due to COVID. So we want to put a group together. People can donate whatever they want to these high school seniors. If you want to be part of it, we'll pair you up. I got paired with this high school senior. She's super sweet, but her mom, obviously, right? Like her mom is the one who reached out to me because we didn't want to like give teenagers to adults in social
Right.
media. So her mom reached out to me. We had text communication. I learned some of her favorite things. I learned she was going to be going to a local college. And I said, okay, I'm going to come and meet you. I met her mom, her dad, her siblings, her. I gave the little bucket with the gifts and goodies and some cash for some textbooks at her local college. And I wished her well. That was how we met. This woman has now been a key role in where I'm at today with my medical journey because she has POTS and she went through it and she sent me to the doctors that I needed to see. She was like, don't even mess with that. Go see these people. And she attends this church and she said, hey, based off of the conversations we've had, I think that this is a church y'all would like.
Yeah.
And like, we're great friends now. And this was in 2020. And this is how we met. I randomly got paired with her daughter. And I say randomly, right?
Right.
God's provision. It is so, it's always a wonderful, baffling moment for me.
Yeah. I know when you see,
look at how you work.
Right. Like I call it divinely orchestrated events. Like everything's just orchestrated together and it's just divine connections. And it is like, that's why we have to take that obligation and accusation off of him because he's going to provide for us, but it's not going to be always in a monetary form. Like I think when we think of provision, it has to be monetary. And like sometimes it's trading services, sometimes it's waiving a bill, sometimes it is a resource that connects you to another resource to help you get the answers, or bypass, like you said, like don't even touch those doctors, like they're not going to be able to help you, but this one will. And I've had very similar stories with my infertility journey of meeting this woman in a Christian like infertility Facebook group. She lived in Texas at the time. She's in like Washington DC now. And she was telemedding with a doctor 30 minutes from my house. And she's like, you need to like this doctor telemeds, like, aren't you in this area? And I was like, yeah, let me look up. I'm like, oh my gosh, like she's like 20-30 minute drive for me. And she like was a stepping stone to where I'm at in my health today. And so it's been, yeah, like God provides for us in completely unexpected, unique ways. That's why I'm like, look for those weird ways and come into that posture of surrender of like, okay, God, I just need to trust that you are going to have work this for my good and not be in a spirit of fear or a spirit of lack, but be in a spirit of rest and receiving and open to your will, your desire, your plans, and just be that vessel for working those plans out like into fruition, so I love how our story has intertwined so much, like, and even just you and I meeting, like, I just was like, hey, who wants to be on my podcast and dive deeper into faith and business? And like, we come to find out we have so much in common, like different health issues, but similar experiences, and similar journeys with our own faith. And so thank you so much, Hillary, for like just stepping out and like answering my like Facebook post.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad that you posted it. I've kind of made this decision, and I say made this decision, I think it was made for me, but it was use me as you will, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, when I saw that, I was like, absolutely, let's talk about God, let's talk about business. I think that it's something that needs to happen a lot more often, and we're just I don't know if it's more widely accepted now, or if it's, just the fact that we have so much exposure to so many things through social media these days that I see it a lot more. But I think it's important, right? We need to talk about our faith journey because it's not perfect. It's not this Instagram post, right?
Yeah.
Faith is wonky, and it's a valley and it's a peak and it's a merry-go-round at points, and it's really, what are we doing with that experience? And are we helping to share the word? Are we helping to build the kingdom? And is our story going to be, not necessarily what helps somebody understand, but can we relate? And if we can, then we can say, here's what he's done.
Yeah.
Can he do it for you? I'm sure he could, but you know, it's really going to be, what are you looking for? And do you want it? Because there's a cost, right? Like, there's a book that my husband keeps telling me to read. I haven't read it, but it's called The Cost of Discipleship. And from his explanation, he's talking about, we're a slave to the flesh, or we're a slave to Christ. There's no other way around it. And so I learned the cost of discipleship. I had my mother who decided she has always stood her ground. And there was this point in time where she relented, and she was like, you're right. Okay. When it came to God. And I said, how can you let somebody, and I've kind of felt like, you know, who was it? David, I think, at that point with Goliath. And he said, how can you let him talk about God that way? And he went in and he fought Goliath. That's kind of how I felt. Like, how can you let them talk about God in this way and not say anything? And that was when I came back and I told my husband, this is the cost. Like, this is the cost. I had to say something to somebody that I revere so much and I respect so well, that it hurt me, and I cried to tell her this, but correction is needed. And so, you know, I mean, I think it's great that you have this podcast, that we can talk about these things and how it relates to business, because ultimately, you know, if we're going to do business with the businesses that are open to us and helpful to us, but that doesn't mean that we're exclusionary. I don't know the word. We're not exclusive. There you go. It's just, you know, can we help you? Let's do that.
Amen. Well, thank you so much, Hillary, for going on this journey with me. I would love for you to share, if people do want to find you or work with you or partner with you, like, share about how you can serve them and where they can partner with you.
Absolutely. So I have a website, and I'll give you the links. I'm on any social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I have no idea. There's another one, I'm sure. But I run a financial services business. I help anybody, right? We're nationwide, but I help you understand your retirement, your pension, Social Security. I have members on my team. We have over 40 years of experience together, and we look at your big picture. We say, are there holes? Are there red flags, right? If there's a hole in the boat, we want to help you plug it to make sure that when you retire, you stay retired. And if you only come back to work, you do it because you want to, not because you have to. We look at protecting not just you, not just your family, but your retirement account as well. Because medical issues and illnesses do arise, but we need to make sure that we're not draining your account in order to keep you afloat.
Right.
So we look at all of that. Absolutely.
That's awesome, and definitely so needed. So thank you so much, Hillary, for joining me today. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you have an awesome day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We would love to hear from you. So please share your takeaways by tagging @LiveVictorious over on Instagram and leave a review.
This will help us get more visibility and reach more women like you for the kingdom. We appreciate you and are praying for you as you shine your light in the business world and rise to your purpose.